Hello students, I am Manish. Welcome to this channel where physics meets imagination. Together we will explore concepts, not just through words, but through visuals that make them come alive. Have you ever wondered what really make electric current flow? I mean, you are watching this video right now, thanks to electricity flowing inside your device. But how does it actually start? Let's uncover that story from a silent resting charge to a powerful flow of electric current that lights up our world. So far in this series, we have explored the world of static electric charges, that means stationary charge, and we grasped about that in the first unit electrostatics. We already covered this topic in detail as per class 12 syllabus using clear explanations and 3D animations. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend you check that out first. Now, it's time to move forward. Literally, the next step is to take those boring steel charges and make them move. Once a charge starts moving, we get something magical, the electric current. But here is an interesting thing. A moving charge can behave in two ways. It can move with constant velocity or it can move with changing velocity. That is accelerated motion. When charge moves with constant velocity, we study them under the second unit current electricity. But when charges begin to accelerate, they unlock new powers. And that's when we step into the world of electromagnetism. Yes, that's the next major topic, and it includes two exciting chapters: moving charges and magnetism, magnetism and matter. But first, let's begin at the very birth of electric current. There is one character that has deep connection with both charges and current, and that is conductor. Metals, for example, are good conductors. But why? Because metal have a huge number of free electrons. Electrons that are not tightly bound and can move easily. Imagine this. If you take a metal cube that is 1 meter in length, 1 meter in width and 1 meter in height, it would contain around 10 to the power 28 free electrons. That's a number with 28 zeros after 1. These free electrons are the reason why metals can conduct electricity. Now picture this. We take a solid conductor and attach a disc made of insulating material on both ends, one on the left and one on the right. Let's give the left disc a positive charge and right disc a negative charge. What happens? Well, an electric field is created inside the conductor from the positive disc toward the negative disc. As soon as this happens, the free electrons inside the metal conductor starts running. They move toward the positive disc because opposite attract. And this sudden flow of electron causes a very interesting effect. On the side of the positive disc, negative charge gets induced inside the conductor. On the side of the negative disc, positive charge gets induced. In short, the conductor creates its own internal electric field, just opposite to the one created by the discs. Why? Because the conductor wants to neutralize or cancel out the applied electric field. When we connect the charged disc, conductor lets electrons to move for a very short time to cancel the electric field. That brief flow of electrons is what we call electric current. Yes, current was born, even if it lasted just a moment. So now the real question is, can we make this current continue flowing? Not just for a second, but continuously. Think about it. Here is the idea. Earlier, current had to stop flowing because it neutralized the field. But what if we don't let that happen? What if we keep giving more positive charges to the positive disc and more negative charges to the negative disc? If we do this continuously, then the electric field never gets neutralized. And that means electrons will keep flowing and current will keep running. This system, this beautiful mechanism, is what we call a battery. Whether it is your phone battery, a car battery, or a remote battery, it's simply a system that maintains a constant potential difference, a constant electric field across a conductor. Now here is something even more fascinating. As the battery converts chemical energy into electrical energy, the electrons gradually released in the chemical reactions may enter the external circuit and join the flow. However, the vast majority of current is carried by the conduction electrons already present in the metal of the wire, which are set into motion by the electric field maintained by the battery. We won't go deeper into how the battery itself works here, since that is a separate topic on its own. Even when we don't apply any electric field, the electrons inside a conductor are never at rest. At normal room temperature, electrons inside a metal are always in random motion, constantly colliding with atoms or kernels of the metal. This random motion is known as thermal motion. In fact, the speed of these electrons during thermal motion is extremely high, about 10 to the power 5 meters per second. That is incredibly fast. Now, you might wonder, if electrons are already moving so quickly, should not there be an electric current? But, and this is really important, even though electrons are already moving inside a conductor, their motion is completely random. So what happens? Well, their individual movements cancel each other out. One electron zips upward with some velocity u1, another dives downward with velocity u2. Some move left, some right. It's a chaotic dance, but with no direction. That means, if we try to calculate the average velocity of all these electrons in any one direction, the result is zero. No net movement in one direction, no organized flow, and therefore no net current. So even though there is a sea of electrons inside the metal, this random thermal motion alone cannot produce electric current. For current to flow, the electrons must prefer a direction, and for that we need an external push, the electric field. The moment we apply an electric field across a conductor, the electrons begin to behave differently. They still keep colliding and moving randomly, just as they always do. But now, there is also a tiny net movement in one specific direction opposite to the electric field. In other words, the electrons start drifting with a very small velocity of about 10 to the power minus 4 meters per second. This might seem negligible, and you are absolutely right. It really is tiny as compared to the thermal motion already present. Electrons at room temperature already move randomly with thermal velocity of about 10 to the power 5 meters per second. So when we apply an electric field, it gives very slight additional resultant push, producing a small net drift in a particular direction. At first glance, it seems extremely small, almost negligible. But remember, there is not just one electron. There are unimaginable number of electrons. Together, their combined motion produces a noticeable and effective electric current. This average velocity with which all electrons drift in one direction is called drift velocity. The gentle, average motion of electrons as they move, while still happily colliding inside the conductor. You can imagine this like a river flowing through a rocky path. The water keeps hitting rocks, turning, bouncing, but overall it keeps flowing forward. In the same way, electrons inside a conductor, when influenced by an electric field, move, collide, bounce. But on average they flow opposite to the field. This is how electrons are actually considered to move inside a conductor to create electric current. For illustration purposes, we usually represent electrons drifting neatly in one direction, like this, which you have already studied in 10th standard. Current I equals charge Q flowing per unit time t through a given cross-sectional area. But now, at this level, we know that due to quantization, charge Q can be written as Ne, where N is the number of charge carriers, here electrons. Since N is extremely large, the overall current becomes significantly noticeable. This smooth flow of imagination about how current works might seem quite obvious, because in the mathematical derivation of drift velocity, we don't actually consider every collisions. Instead, we introduce a term called relaxation time, which helps us account for the effect of all those collisions in an average sense. Imagine an electron inside a conductor, collide, then travel freely for some time, and then again collides. The time duration for which it moves without colliding between two successive collisions is called the relaxation period. For one electron, let's denote this time as t1. Similarly, other electrons will have relaxation time t2, t3, t4 and so on. But wait, why is this relaxation period so important? Because the electric field can influence electron only while it moves freely, that is during this relaxation time. To simplify, we take an average value for all electrons by adding all relaxation time for n electrons and divide by n. This average value is denoted by tau and is called the relaxation time or average relaxation time. And this tau tells us the typical duration for which electrons move freely before colliding. If you have understood the intuition behind all these calculations, then this video has done its job. See, when we take the average relaxation time, tau, we are basically assuming that we don't need to focus on the collisions themselves because tau already takes care of them. It means we are only looking at that small free path during which the electric force is acting on the electrons. The initial average velocity, which comes from the random thermal motion, is taken as 0. So what remains is the velocity given by the electric field, and that's what we call drift velocity, Vd. Its average direction is opposite to the direction of the electric field. Now, you can imagine under the influence of the electric force Fe, the electrons slowly drifting with a small velocity Vd. During the time tau, when they are not colliding and the electric field is guiding their motion. Alright, then let's move to the final part of the derivation. Now, we know about basic formula. V equals u plus at, where u is initial velocity. The time will be the average relaxation time tau, for which electric force is accelerating electrons with acceleration a. We saw that the average initial velocity before the electric field is applied is 0, because thermal motion is random and has no fixed direction. When we apply the electric field, every electron gain an extra drift velocity in one direction. This average final velocity is called drift velocity and is denoted by Vd. Now, we know F equals ma, where m is mass of electron. Thus, acceleration equals F by m. Here, the force comes from the electric field, that will be QE. For electrons, Q equals minus E. As we substitute acceleration in the equation of drift velocity, we get minus E electric field E tau over m. The negative sign means electron drift opposite to the direction of electric field, and its magnitude is E tau over m. In chapter 2, Electrostatic Potential and Capacitance, we already know V equals E times L, where L is the length of the conductor over which potential difference is applied. Hence, E equals V by L. Substitute this into our drift velocity formula, we get Vd equals EV tau over ml. Okay, look into this formula. If there is a constant potential difference voltage, V, or electric field across a specific unchanging conductor, same material length and cross-sectional area, under constant temperature, then the drift velocity Vd will be constant. Don't get confused with acceleration. The electrons accelerate but within an extremely short average time tau, the relaxation time. They collide and randomize their motion, effectively losing the added velocity gain from the field. The drift velocity is the small, steady average of all these start-stop accelerate cycles across huge number of electrons. It's something like a huge traffic. Some cars might accelerate on some free time, but at the end, overall cars in a traffic move in a constant velocity. This represents the entire ensemble of electrons achieving a stable average constant drift velocity, because acceleration is balanced out by the frequency of collision. Notice how tau appears in both forms of equation. It is a crucial factor that determines drift velocity. It depends on several factors: the distance between atom and the size of atom. But the most important factor is temperature. If temperature increases, thermal velocity also increases, which increases the frequency of collisions, or collisions happens more frequently. Therefore, relaxation time decreases. And according to our formula, we know that if relaxation time decreases, drift velocity also decreases. In conclusion, we can simply say, electric field is always ready to accelerate the electrons. A higher temperature increases the frequency of collisions with vibrating lattice atoms. This decreases the relaxation time, which limits how long electrons can accelerate in their free path, resulting in a lower average drift velocity. Okay, now let's finalize this video with derivation for the relation between drift velocity and electric current. Consider a conductor with length L, cross-sectional area A, and electron density N. Here N is not the total number of electrons, it represents the number of electrons per unit volume. We know a basic relation. current I equals Q over T, where Q is total charge and T is time. First, we need the total charge present in the conductor. How do we find that? First, find the number of electrons in the conductor, which is equals to electron per unit volume multiplied by total volume of a conductor. So we can write number of electrons equals to small n multiplied by A times L, that is a total volume of a conductor. Now to find total charge, simply multiply the number of electrons by the charge on one electron, that is minus E multiplied by NaL. Now this is the total charge available in the conductor. Next, when we apply an electric field, drift velocity comes into action. All electrons drift slowly through the conductor. The time t taken by the electrons to drift through the entire length L is t equals distance over velocity. Here distance is L and velocity is Vd, that is drift velocity. So t equals L over Vd. Now substitute these values into the formula I equals Q over T. We get I equals minus E multiplied by NaL over L by Vd. After simplification, we get I equals minus NEA Vd, that is drift velocity. The negative sign shows that the direction of current is opposite to the direction of drift velocity Vd. This way we also maintain our sign convention of charge carriers and the conventional direction of current, which is considered opposite to the direction of flow of electrons. Always remember, physics is not just about memorizing formulae, it's about understanding how nature behaves. Once you see the connections, every equation starts to tell you a story. So that's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching.